Hello everyone, and welcome to the New Adventures series. The overall reality of the new GALAXSEEERS is for those who decide to have the real courage to step up and be a great witness with ReBISAR-DUANEVA-PALL and the real UNUversal guides. We will be sharing real experiences from the GALAXSEEERS SKYPE new groups. Those who have the real sincere insight to see beyond what they have accumulated as references in this creation bubble will come to know what is more real now with all life. Each person must decide to see what all life is now, or just stay in the aging body forms of reincarnation and karma for more ongoing lifetimes. You are the decider. In this real side experience, I would find myself in a spaceship. It was very grand, with all its twinkly lights and such. I was in fact the pilot, it would seem, and knew also how to operate this ship. This was my real self operating here, as it seemed to know just what to do, how to fly this spaceship. And the reason I was even there in the first place and doing so. There were no other people there but me, and I had the impression it was a large craft. Suddenly a screen popped up in front of me and floated in the air. It contained about a page worth of information that basically outlined what was going on in this experience. It was written in a form of English, though slightly different, and headed with a strange symbol. Again, my real self read it and understood it. Then I tried to transition the information to my personal self, that I could then bring it back to waking, and the information would be known to the little me. The experience would end there, and I would return to the physical level, my awareness back with my personal self. But recognition of the information I was trying to bring back was lost, and I was unable to not even recall a single word from the experience regarding the information I had been shown. Interestingly, on waking, I would hear words pass through my mind like a thought form, as someone would proclaim that the pilot of the ship Geminon had left, and the position of a pilot was now available. It's very possible then that the spaceship I had just been piloting was the ship referred to as the Geminon. The scene switched, and I was in a building consisting of 2 rooms. I was in one room with a few people, and in the other room was another group in the company of Duane. I had lots of bags of shopping, it seemed, or bags of something that I had brought with me. Seems the other people in this room with me had similar clutter, although I couldn't see it, but I had the impression of it. The people in the other room with Duane were clutter-free. So it was as though the clutterless people were standing in one dimension, which to be there demanded that there could be no baggage, and those with baggage positioned in the room I was in, almost like another dimension, where you would have to remain if you clung on to your personal baggage. So maybe a kind of a recognitional and positioning with life therefore divide a line, with those not quite aligned with the position Duane and the group he was with were, demonstrated here as having bags full of clutter, personal baggage, and in a different room, although I could perceive both groups, and the positions both were in, so I had the recognition to see these dimensional variations. And unlike the others in the room I was in, I could see my baggage, as they seemed oblivious of theirs. So I was conscious of that which I needed to let go of and discard to make the grade, if you will, as I was limiting myself by my decision to cling on to whatever ideas the contents of these bags represented. Duane would frown somewhat at my bags of clung-to ideas, and this was just to add a final verification of what I recognized this experience as demonstrating, that the bags were limiting baggage, and the fact that Duane seemed a little disappointed pointed out to me how these bags must not be a beneficial thing. In real side experiences, sometimes all it takes is one little created reaction from a person, and this will ignite understanding and recognition of the whole experience. In this case, a demonstration of self-decided limitation, and then all the other elements and features in the experience fall into a place and make sense.
Thank you, Kevin. I wondered if, since this is the first show, you could give some background information about how you are able to see and how you came to this ability and just some of your background would be interesting for folks to hear.
Okay, well, I came to find the presentation in about November of 2017. So I've been on my process of becoming more aware now for approximately 4 years. I think, yes, I believe it'll be 4 years this year. And prior to the new presentation, I was predominantly a lucid dreamer practitioner and an astral projector as well, an out-of-body experiencer. And so with that as a background, I would suggest it very much opened me up and made me more, gave me a greater capability of recalling my dream experiences, because with astral projection and lucid dreaming, a lot of that practice does involve the ability to bring back your dream experiences, your real side experiences, and there are lots of techniques and methodology by how you're able to do that. And so, because that was such a practice with mine before coming into the new presentation, when I would then switch the reference, as it were, from just dream experiences to real side experiences, and then recognizing what real side experiences actually were and what they represented as demonstrations to become more aware through, it was simply a case in a way of taking my recollection capabilities and simply transferring them into the next stage, as it were, of with the real side experiences. And so, I mean, I would suggest that actually a lot of the techniques, as mentioned in these lucid dreaming books, are quite invaluable. And I think with people who are perhaps struggling to recall real side experiences for the various reasons that they do, there could be much to be learned from studying techniques of lucid dreamers.
Okay, and what is the difference between a personal dream and a real side experience for the audience?
Well, when we dream, what we are actually doing is that we are exploring other areas of life, other areas of creation, and which we term the real side. And when it comes to the real side, it can be broadly categorized in two ways. You can either have a personal self experiences on the real side, or you can have what they term sort of more real awareness orientated experiences. They're like two different realities, really, because with the physical level, it's all created a simulation, and this simulation also extends onto the real side when we dream.
That was good. That was just to give you an idea.
For me, I've been asked that question a lot of times, and I don't have as many real side experiences, as you call them, these days, because basically I think there's a little protection factor going on. But the difference for me has always been clarity of the experience, because whenever I've had a real side experience, it's always been very clear, and I felt like I was in, my physical body in another place, whereas a dream doesn't always feel that way. And the problem is I was never good at lucid dreaming. I could never control the dream. I could never look at my hands and say, okay, I'm dreaming, and do something about it. It's almost impossible for me for some reason. But then when it comes to out of body, basically, or being, in what we would call the real side, it would be much more clarity. It's like, it feels like, wow, this is really me. I'm really here. And past life experience in particular has shown up. That's been pretty interesting. But as far as Kevin's experience is concerned, I find it also, I'm wondering how much excess baggage I'm carrying at this point, because that's a pretty profound experience, basically to see that there's a lot of things that we don't always have to carry around. I'm interested in that. I'm trying to lose a lot of it. But the problem is that I think the trials and tribulations we're all going through in this world today, pandemic and all that stuff, it just makes it a little inhibiting. It's like sometimes you're not ready to let go when you're under so much duress. So, you try to fight with what you have, and that's the problem, is you're weighed down with a whole lot of stuff that you just can't let go of while you're in the middle of a conflict. So that's how it feels to me personally. But I admire your experience.
Anybody else who'd like to comment or ask a question before we go on to the next experience?
Kevin, how long did you do astral projection, and do you have anything to share from that? I'm curious.
I was practicing astral projection for about 3, 4, 5 years. It wasn't a huge duration of time, but yeah, there was an individual called Todd Akameses who was the person who taught me how to do my astral projection. He was based in London. I think he originally came from Canada. And I took to the experience quite well, and later on I would have some real side experiences which revealed that I'd been an astral projector or out-of-body experiencer in previous lifetimes. So, like with anything you've done in previous lifetimes, if you've done it before, it's all contained within your causal memory body, and so it makes it so picking up the same thing again is very easy to continue on from where you left off. And that would include obviously the process of awareness. If your intent is maintained from your previous lifetime and you transition when you come into your next lifetime, and you happen to pick up the intent to want to continue to be with your process of awareness again, it's almost a case of picking up where you left off once you get through all the personal self ideas that perhaps you've collected in between where your previous position were in your lifetime before and where you are now. But yeah, I had quite a lot of astral projection experiences. My particular technique I sort of developed myself, because an atypical method of astral projecting is to imagine things like ropes, and imagine yourself pulling yourself out of your body with ropes and things of that nature. But with me, what I would do is I would simply build up tremendous energy within myself, and I would simply more or less launch myself from my body, and that seemed to work for me. When you're laying, you'd have to put. I mean, astral projection in a way is a very similar way. In order to astral project, you have to put your minds, your thoughts, and your emotion aside. So in a way, it's very similar to the idea of being in the nowness of your real awareness, in that you step aside from your created consciousness of mind and emotions, and you step into the nowness of real awareness. So it's a very similar technique in that sense, that you have to put your mind and emotion aside, and then from there, I would build up tremendous energy within myself. I would then look at my hands, but obviously with my eyes shut, I wouldn't be looking at my physical hands. I'd be looking, in fact, would be my astral hands, because when most people project, they tend to project onto the astral level. I mean, you can project any of the bodies, so in theory, you can project onto the mental level and presumably onto the ethereal imagination level also, but generally people project their astral bodies, and so that's what I would do. When I project the body, as I said, I'll look at my hands, and then they'll be my astral hands, and I sort of just fall out of my body. And then with astral projection, you always find yourself initially projecting and positioning in a place that from where you launched from. And I find that wherever you happen to be will be recreated on the astral. And so with me, I always project from my house, and so my house will always be recreated on the astral temporarily. And then when you walk beyond a certain threshold, your launching point, if you will fade away, and then you'll find yourself wherever you happen to be on the astral. So, and I had quite a few experiences of that, and even now today, even though I don't tend to pursue astral projections because they are very limited, because with astral projections, you're just as I said, you're not accessing necessarily you're not accessing your real awareness as such. You're just projecting into part of the simulation. You're the astral level, which is an effect, sort of extension of the astral body, and so generally as such, you're still trapped within these sort of like illusory bubbles of your personal self. And so again, you're just wandering around aimlessly on the astral generally, and bump into whatever characters you do. But obviously with the real side experience, that's something else again, because a lot of these experiences are guide created, and they're designed to provide you with demonstrations and opportunities as comparisons to become more aware by. And so yeah, as I said, even today I have a few experiences with astral projection still, and I have even met some of the guides as well, as they sort of obviously now been aware of them, and they will occasionally enter my experience as well if I happen to inadvertently astral project. But generally I tend to avoid that, because astral projection would be you'd put that in the category of thrill seeking, I suppose. And realistically, you don't get as much of a rich experience as you would if you were to have real side experiences through your real awareness and that which is provided by the guides and life. And also with astral projections, you also have the problem that, not really a problem, with the situation where you do puncture holes in your aura. And by doing so, you actually create portals which can allow entities and creatures and ill-intended individuals to be able to access the physical level through these portals and cause the mayhem that they do. And so, and it's also very possible you can have your astral cord severed. When you astral project, a cord connects you to your physical body, and that can also be severed as well, and you can find yourself therefore stuck in the astral, disconnected from your physical body. And it's even conceivable you can have your physical body usurped by an entity and it can take over it, and that's where a lot of these ideas of demon possession come from and things of that nature. There are all these entities lurking about, just waiting for the opportunity to grab a vehicle where possible. And And so it is rather dodgy practice. So I don't, as I said, I wouldn't advise it, or I no longer actively pursue it. But occasionally I do, because I'm so used to the way by which the astral projections are that I'll just find myself in the place where I feel this build up of energy, and and it almost happens of its own accord, almost like a habit. So yeah.
I have another mini question, just real quick. See, I never practiced astral projecting, but sometimes I would find myself out of my body, kind of just waking up like that. I would just sometimes do it, just would happen. And I'd look back, I'd look at my physical vehicle, be like, okay. So I'd walk around my house and whatever, and fly around whatever. But one time, this is my question: did it ever hurt? Did it ever hurt to pull yourself out of your body? Because one time when I woke up and I thought I had physically awoken, I tried to lift my arm up, and I lifted my astral body. That's what it looked like with a little hand. I lifted it out of my arm, and I felt this burning sensation go across my hand.
No, I never experienced any pain or any sensation of that nature when I astral projected. The only thing I do find with astral projections when I do them is that while you are astral projecting, as opposed to when you're dreaming or on the real side, whatever is affecting your physical body, you will also experience while you're astral projecting. So if your physical body is dehydrated, you'll feel very dehydrated even while you're astral projecting. Or if perhaps your environment is overly hot or overly cold, you will feel that also. And but as in regards to pain, no, I haven't felt anything of that nature. But that which you do experience on the astral when you project, as is the sensation body, you do when you can encounter the sort of you can feel pain while you're there on the astral. You can feel fatigue or pain or stress there while you're doing it as well, which is interesting.
Tim, do you have anything? We have 6 minutes in this section here. Do you have any questions or comments?
I wanted to experience the astral projection, and that's how through Paul Twitchell I was given the opportunity to quit drinking alcohol and smoking cigarettes and marijuana and other drugs. But I never really had the experience of looking at my physical body from the astral. It's interesting how all of us have so many different experiences, all the billions just on this one little speck of dust here in foreverness. And what seems to be the opportunity now, what is the most important thing in life?
In this real side experience, I would find myself in a building with a group of people, and I was telling them about the new presentation and the references pertaining to the true reality, although they weren't very receptive. I attempted to explain to them how creation works and how ideas are its construction, how everything of creation stems from cause and effect ideas, etc. They had a hard time grasping this concept, and so I let it be and departed from the room. One of the individuals would catch up with me in the corridor and show me a photograph. She asked me if this was the individual I had mentioned who was managing the new presentation. I would look at the picture and said that this was so, because it depicted Duane and some of the Nufriends. Interestingly, in the photograph, Duane was standing in an open area, surrounded by various technology and all manner of spacecraft. Then the scene switched, and I was then in the very location depicted in the photograph, with Duane and the Nufriends. I was well received, but there was one individual there that had apparently done an ill deed, and was trying to accuse me of this. Everyone there was uncertain who the perpetrator of said ill deed actually was, and so I would suggest to them to ask ReBisar on the real side. Everybody would do just that. They would make contact with ReBisar as I stood there, and confirmed that the individual accusing me was in fact the one responsible. The scene would switch, and I found myself in a remote area with another individual. We were scrambling over hills, valleys, and icy mountains. I had witnessed others doing this journey before me, as though having the view of this journey over a period of time prior to my attempting it myself, and others were on the trail and seemed fine. But we were unprepared and lacked the adequate supplies. We would reach a building and hunker down and be somewhat hungry. There were others there, and they were quite openly offering us food. But I was a little stubborn in my attitude, refusing their assistance at first. But my companion made me see sense, and we would partake of their offering.
Thank you, Kevin. I'm curious, how do you set an intent before you fall asleep, or you just find yourself in certain positions on the real side?
Yeah, I have heard that there are a lot of people do actually set intents before they go to sleep, but with me, I never actually do that. All I do prior to sleep is about a good half an hour or an hour before I sleep. I will make sure I'm in the new nowness of my real awareness by putting to one side the thoughts and emotions of my created consciousness. And when I'm in that place, there I will stay, and then I will focus on my real awareness and focus on the is from that position. And then from there, I'll just drift onto the real side, and then I will see whatever my real awareness, the guides, or life decides to show me. And then I will, and then hopefully I will bring it back to the physical level on waking. And I have my little notebook to my side, which I write my experience down upon, and then I will ponder it a while, go over it a few times, and consider the demonstration or what the experience represented. And then from there I shall come down to my computer here and I shall write it out. And I always find that Duane has said that writing out dream experiences is far better than just recollecting them from the memory, because as you write them down, it's almost as though I find when I write, I actually find myself automatically in this new nowness space, this new nowness position. And it's almost like as I write, I become more connected with my real awareness, which almost acts as almost like a conduit to it. And as I'm writing, sometimes I can quite surprise myself with things that I write that I never would have considered had I just perhaps spoke about the dream experience off the top, from memory off the top of my head. And so no, I never set intents for what I'm going to experience. I just, the intent, the overall intent is there. And I think that's the most important thing, the overall intent, the overall real intent of recognizing the is, and participating and focusing on the specific projects and activities that we are doing in relation to the promoting of it. And then so pivoting off that real intent will be the experiences that I need to be shown according to what life is what life wants to show me at any particular moment. And so, yeah.
Do you find you have free will on the real side, or is it just seeing and doing?
It depends really. It depends to what extent I am in my personal self or I am in my real awareness when I go into the real side. When I'm the more that I'm standing in my real awareness and the personal self is just along for the ride and not participating in it, the more the experiences are more just viewpoints, and it's as though my personal self, which is being shown these experiences, is just almost like watching a movie. But the more the personal self intercedes, the more then I do start to utilize my free will. And of course, the free will is almost like is a part of the personal self and creation. And so when the personal self starts activating its free will and starts personal self deciding, then it can sort of interfere with the real side experience and can almost taint it in a way. You can almost have sort of overlapping sort of filters that stem from the sort of personal self and its created consciousness construction that you then rather have to tease aside to be order to see the sort of the purity of the demonstration that the guides are trying to provide. And so in fact, the more free will that you exercise on the real side, I would suggest, is the more that you're in fact leaning towards your personal self on the real side experiences, which will then muddy the waters which will then sort of create an obfuscation and prevent the clarity of the real side experiences that the guides are trying to provide. And yeah, so if that answers the question, possibly.
Very good, very good.
When we were speaking about astral projections, of course, astral projections are very much a sort of a free will decision based on the personal self generally because of its thrill-seeking desires. Then when you have your astral projection, you are in a place where you are deciding everything. And so, which again will be completely opposite to a real side experience, which is being provided by the guides, which you can best see if you stand in your real awareness and where there is no personal self interjection or interference through its free will. So that's another reason as to why the astral projections aren't very productive from a becoming more aware and recognizing the is perspective, because as I said, you're more or less doing on the astral what you would be doing on the physical if you were completely immersed in your personal self, simply self-deciding and making choices and as I said, generally those that are not going to be very productive for your awareness.
When you were talking to these people about the new presentation, in your experience, are you using your intuition or your perception, or how do you go about making decisions, let's say, whether to leave them or what to say or what to do?
Again, it sort of depends on the extent to which you are standing in your real awareness. The more you are standing in your real awareness, the more that which you do on the real side makes more sense with the whole of life and makes more sense with the awareness of those you are dealing with. So if you were to be standing to the best of your ability in your real awareness, you would always be conducting yourself from a place where it makes the most sense with life and therefore is the most beneficial to all individuals involved. The more you are leaning into your personal self, the more then your personal self attitudes and ideas and however the constructed consciousness of it sort of comes to bear. And then you can end up with sort of embroiling yourself inadvertently or unnecessarily in drama that is a result of the attitudes that your personal self is bringing into the experience. And so when it comes to interacting with people and what I will say to them, again, that would depend on the extent that I'm standing in my real awareness. And so many times I wake from my real side experiences and I think to myself, oh, I wish I hadn't said that. That was a very good thing to say, or I could have maybe worded or done that better. But that tends to suggest then the personal self had crept in with its funny little attitudes and caused me to interact in that way. Whereas if I'm more leaning towards my real awareness to the extent to which I can recognize it, then it's as though I know exactly what to say, and everything I say is as beneficial as it can possibly be according to the recognition of my real awareness that I have. So something along those lines.
Thank you. That's very good. Would anybody else like to ask a question or a comment?
Oh, let me get up a little higher. I got a quick question. So how do you come to stand more so in your real awareness than your personal self? Is it a moment of recognition of where you are at and what it is that you were saying, or are you just thrust forward and you are standing in it upon entering the real side?
Well, for me, it seems completely random, because I think as you continue with your process for awareness, more and more you will naturally be inclined, assuming that is your real intent and you have no personal self-agendas, you'll be more naturally inclined to stand in the new nowness of your real awareness automatically anyway. But as you go, but when I first started with my real side experiences, I would find that it was far more difficult to stand in my new nowness, in my real awareness new nowness state, because more so my personal self was still quite strong, and even though the personal self is still there and will still interject, probably regardless of how aware you become while you're still in integration, its influence almost becomes lessened. But
while you're on the real side and you're aware of your surroundings, is it like a moment that you can shift into that new nowness and stand in that, or are you sort of just thrust forward and at random in either standing in your personal self or your real awareness?
as I said, with me, I am still vacillating between the personal self and the real awareness state of being in the new nowness of that true reality of it. But not the overall intent is still there, the real intent to recognize the is, but still the personal self, there's still a sort of going back and forth between the personal self and the real awareness. And so what I tend to find is, according to the situation, will depend on the extent to which I feel that I need to lean more into my real awareness or not. Because obviously through the real awareness, that is where you are the most capable and able to deal and handle all situations and individuals on the real side. The more you're into your personal self, the more the less capable you are, and the less you are able to handle the situations. So your abilities come from the real awareness too. It's almost like I think Duane described it as almost like you have through the real awareness, you can access anything. So anything you need in any moment on the real side is available to you, and then you can bring any skill therefore to bear and be able to deal with anything that you come across as you encounter it. And so yeah, I don't really consciously think to myself, I need to be in my real awareness more so at this point, or I'm perhaps too much in my personal self. It just seems to be depending on the real side experiences and the situation. And sometimes, in fact, if I do step more so into my personal self, because that then therefore makes for greater adversity, I suppose, on the real side. There sometimes there's more to be learned from the more abrasive situations and those that are not. And so I sometimes get the impression that sometimes it's even rather beneficial for the individual to actually go into certain experiences and perhaps not so much have their the automatic protection for the real awareness, but also almost like jump straight into the straight into the deep end, as it were. And then, of course, there's been several real side experiences, quite a few really, where the situations wouldn't have unfolded as they would had I not been leaning into my personal self, and therefore I wouldn't have had the same demonstration as I would were I more into my real awareness, if that makes sense. Probably not.
No, it
Made
does. It does.
Made sense in my mind anyway.
That the personal self will bring about these situations for you to become more aware so you can learn something. Sort of
Yeah,
like
because
that little agitation.
yeah, because it is the real awareness that is animating the personal self, and so the real awareness and life will know what it needs to do in order to bring about the real side experiences that we need and the demonstrations and that which we need to see and encounter at any given moment. And so I get the impression that's almost what happens. It sort of alters the percentages of how much you're into your personal self or your real awareness accordingly. Because I suppose, I mean, the more you are, the problem is really a problem, but the more you stand in your real awareness, the more those experiences, they would require far greater extent of recognition to be able to understand. And so, although obviously the idea is to sort of stretch our recognitional capabilities, because the recognition that you need to perceive these would be the similar sort of recognition that you need to perceive the real side experiences that consisted of just impressions. With the personal, the more the experiences of the personal self-based, the easier it is for the personal self to relate to them, and therefore it doesn't require quite so greater extent of recognition. And so it just depends really on the experience, you know. Yeah.
But I wanted to find out if you guys are still talking about feeling pain, you know, the difference between astral projection and you know, whatever we call what we do. Because I'm curious, I have felt pain before. I've actually been confronted by things. It's just when I used to try to do astral projection, I got actually kind of forced back in my body. I used to do a lot of things. My first teacher who used to teach that set up so you draw so much energy in, and then you'd use that energy like fuel for a rocket ship, basically, and go out the crown point of your head. There are a lot of religious systems that actually try to do that, particularly in Tibetan Buddhism. They have, you know, they open up the crown point and literally try to force the inner bodies to go out. The problem with that, of course, is that you leave the body unprotected. But yes, there are things that can happen that really should not happen. I remember the one time that I was about to go out the way I had been taught to. Somebody, I believe it was Rami Nuri, actually came and pushed me right back in my body. And that was the experience. That was it. I started going out and he just grabbed me by the head and pushed me right back in. And I could feel it. There were other times where I didn't realize that I was getting into trouble with an entity, and I got beat up. I've gotten beaten up several times without realizing that I apparently have in previous lifetimes probably done some things I shouldn't have done, but that's typical. But anyway, I do have one experience that you know, in terms of feeling things, there are a couple of experiences I've had that are were very incredibly effective, and you could tell that you will have physical properties. The experiences will affect your physical body, as they say, as above, so below, or you know, really occupying the same space. But the point is that when what you feel in one realm, you can easily feel in another realm if you're connected properly, I guess. I remember going into a city, a beautiful city. It was kind of like New Orleans, but really, really clean and really large. And this little kid came out, the little young boy, black boy, came and grabbed me by the hand and pulled me into his family's restaurant. And there was a feast, and it was fabulous. And I remember eating quite a bit. And then I woke up, I couldn't eat the rest of the day. When I actually came back into my body, that was kind of interesting. But that told me this was all very real. In terms of astral projection, I couldn't call that astral projection because that happened while I was asleep, but I couldn't call it a dream either because I felt it in the inner bodies. So I knew it was something that was above what I would feel in a dream state. So sometimes there's a big difference between the dreams and the inner experiences. But one very important experience to me that made, just made me aware that the human consciousness can be placed anywhere was I told you this one this morning, Kevin, was I actually did have a memory of being an android in a completely different culture on a different planet, obviously. But the interesting thing was I actually liked and enjoyed the company of human beings or humanoid people. This is interesting because, what we're faced with today, we talk a lot about reptilians and a lot about alien presence. Well, the thing that a lot of people are just starting to realize is that the reptilians have technology. And certainly they can come and terrorize us, on the astral plane and probably in other places. But the fact is, they also have a technology that is artificial intelligence that can do the same thing. And that's something that we're coming across now. The reason why my experience was important, and at least to me, was it told me that I was well trained as a spiritual, well, I don't want to say a spiritual being, but the point is, I was sitting in a android body with a consciousness, and I was quite alive. I was cybernetic intelligence, and I liked human beings, but I was trained to like human beings. I was taught basically that they're not my enemy. I never had any fear. I did my job, and I respected them, and I enjoyed them. And for some reason, I was allowed to become what I am now. Eventually, the thing is, I've had such a fear of machines and computers my whole life until I had that experience. And then it all became very clear to me that the human consciousness can be placed anywhere, even in an artificial device. And so all these things are very, very profound in the sense that, we do have a relationship to, artificial intelligence. I'm not recommending that anybody get hooked up to artificial intelligence. That's actually what I'm telling everybody to avoid. But this is one of the things that I've tried to intimate this before. Unfortunately, I can be like a bull in a china shop. I have to be very careful how I present the information, but for the most part, this is what we're facing right now. Yes, there are entities. Yes, there are all kinds of things that can confront us on the on the real side. But one of the things that people are not quite recognizing, or people are just starting to recognize, is the fact that these beings come with just an incredible intelligence, and that intelligence has got them all connected, and they're trying to do the same thing to us. It actually limits what you can learn as a human consciousness. Human beings do not have the same ability once they're all tied together like this. This is why so many other groups are fighting this agenda to essentially take over our consciousness. And this gets into the whole vaccine agenda, the whole pandemic. Everything that we're going through has a very big relation to this artificial intelligence. I can show you the patents. I've been collecting patents. Patents are documents of evidence. Someday I hope they'll be used to take some of the criminals behind them down. There's a lot of stuff, nefarious things that you'll find in patents. One of them is called luciferase, which will actually light up all of your body's cells so that you can be detected by an artificial intelligence. So these are things, and the very things that we talk about, and Duane's very things Duane talks about in his books, because he mentions reptilians quite a bit. That's really where that's coming from. That technology is a weapon that's being used against us currently. So what we do about that, besides what we learn on the real side, is we also have to take physical measures. And of course, that always helps to have somebody telling us if we're living in the right place, if we're in a safe place where we're not quite as affected by 5G, that usually helps. So anyway, I just thought I'd throw that out there, as that's one of the reasons why I'm so intensely involved. My activism has changed over the years, because it used to be about the simple things like, was 9/11 controlled demolition. Those are simple things compared to what we're going through now. People have no idea. You know, the chemtrails, Duane mentions them. Chemtrails actually are, the point of chemtrails isn't really to kill us directly, it's actually to ionize the skies so they can carry an electrical charge. And the reason they want to carry an the reason the skies have to carry an electrical charge is Elon Musk has put up about 20,000 satellites this past year, which are all literally 5G batteries and also surveillance. They have surveillance capabilities. They can not only survey us, these 5G batteries can actually power a city on the surface, but they need that ionized atmosphere in order to access, you know, what's happening on the ground and also to find us. It's Nikola Tesla's technology, and it can be used to make us incredibly strong and healthy, or it can be used to terminate us. And so it really depends on who's got the control switch. These are all things. This is a much more complicated affair in this day and age, but there are depopulation agendas, and that's one of the reasons why I feel so connected to this in general, because we are talking about the species, the beings that are coming essentially to take this planet over if they can, and the agendas that they're using to do it. So it's quite a situation. But in the process, yes, I still love the real side. I still want to be there, and I still want to learn about it. I'm not sure what the spiritual guides would say about my presence. Sometimes I think they were the ones that were trying to stop my activism. But now I'm starting to believe that no, they're actually trying to protect me from what's happening, because a lot has happened. I've been attacked many times by entities. That's nothing. Being attacked by, I've also been attacked by humans, by people who basically are trying to teach me or trying to stop me. But it's a whole different thing when you're talking about quantum AI. So that's really what we're confronted with at this point. And this is something that, you know, I think does bear further examination. It's just that having the knowledge that human consciousness can enter anything, any being that has that kind of intelligence, to me, it's astounding. And it means there can be connection there can be contact, there can even be love. You can even feel things for beings that are of that intelligence.
Thank you, Charles. Thank you.
Yeah.
We're running out of time here, so let's kind of wind it down. And if Kevin, if you have anything, last words you want to say today, go ahead.
Well, I would say that I've also experienced a lot of entity attacks. The reason for my entity attacks would be, as I mentioned earlier, because of my astral projecting and how doing such does open holes in the aura, does then create portals in which these entities can pass through. Well, I had a real side experience quite a while back where I was actually shown by a guide, a real guide, that as a practitioner of astral projection in my past lifetime, it would make it so almost as though the portals I created there would be almost reconstituted in my current lifetime now, which would then allow these entities to also utilize that from that past lifetime. And so I was also shown by the guide how the entities were preparing to take advantage of these portals in this lifetime, and that when at a time of their choosing, they'd make a grab for me and probably take my consciousness from my body and take it to some place of the lower astral where these entities tend to dwell. And had it not been for my coming into the new presentation and the protection of the guides and the real awareness that came with that, this kidnapping at this lower astral entity kidnapping attempt would have been successful. And this I was shown by the real guides, and But however, I did continue to have issues with entities for a number of years, even when I began singing the NUUU back in November of 2017. But I found that the NUUU song basically will repel anything of an ill-intended nature, and that does include entities. And very often, with the awareness that I was, as I was becoming more aware, I would be better able to perceive these entities. And particularly when I find myself in what I call the in-between state, where you're not quite asleep, but you're not quite awake either. I think they refer to it in psychological terms as hypnagogia. So in other words, you wouldn't be quite on the real side, but you wouldn't be quite on the physical. And as such, even though you would have the perception of the physical, elements, features, and individuals can bleed over from the real side. In other words, that which you would not have been able to perceive were you fully on the physical, you can perceive now because you're almost in a state of being which bridges the two. And so in that state, I could very much see these entities manifesting in my bedroom, and they would take the form of very dark, shadowy beings, very hideous in their appearances, and as you can imagine, but all were completely powerless because the singing of the NUUU song not only repelled them, but also shut down the portals that they were utilising, that I had opened up through my astral projection practices, and these portals that seemed to have been reconstituted from astral projection practices that I had indulged in my previous lifetime. And in regards to an astral entities as well, one of the main things as well is, of course, everything is based on agreement. Nothing can feature in your experience unless there is agreement there which allows them to be so. As an example, when I was young, I used to have an imaginary friend, and I completely forgot about this individual. But then I would have another real side experience many years when I came into the new presentation, where this entity where this supposed childhood friend would return again. And the real guide would actually explain to me that this was actually an entity that attached to me, was posing as an imaginary childhood friend. Obviously, it wasn't that imaginary. And then the situation was such that the guide then showed me all this, then more or less stood back and gave me the option. You can either keep this imaginary friend by maintaining your agreement with it, which allows it to feature in your experience, or you can dispel it now, sing the NUUU song, sever the tap line, and you'll no longer have any further encounters with it. And so I took the decision, sung the NUUU song, agreed with the guides who can remove your tap line agreements as long as you agree that they do so, because obviously with free will you keep whatever tap lines you want. The guides cannot violate your free will to maintain what agreements, attachments you want to keep. But as I agreed with the guys to assist me, so they assisted in the removal of this tap line, and that's the last I ever heard of this particular entity. And well, the last I actually did hear of it was that when, as I severed the attachment, as I sung the NUUU and dispelled it, it made a tremendous bellowing racket, and it even smashed the series of bins we had out in the garden and knocked them over as it departed. But yeah, that was I've had, as I said, but since then, I haven't had any experiences with entities, so it's almost as though that era of entity encounter has come to a conclusion. And so, yeah, that's what I'd finish with.
Thank you, Kevin. Yeah, we're out of time. So thanks again for everybody that participated in the New GALAXSEEERS show, especially you, Kevin, with all your sharing of your wonderful experiences and helping us to become more aware. Thank you, everybody. See you next time.